now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me in this Zoom meeting, my presentation on my field-based project. I'm Graciela Ortiz, and I am a student at Cal State Dominguez Hills working on my school leadership program. Today, I'm going to present on my field-based project, which is titled It All Starts and Ends with School Attendance, targeting our chronically absent repeat ninth graders. In my community, 10% of our students drop out of high school. Research shows that chronic absenteeism and repeating a grade level significantly reduces a student's chance of graduation from high school. We're talking about 89% probability of dropping out. Currently, at my school, we have 22 students who are repeat ninth graders. And out of those 22 students, 9 of them also are chronically absent. Knowing the statistics about these 9 students, I felt that something needed to be done. So who am I? And why am I so passionate about this? Well, I'm blessed to have been born and raised in the community where I work. I'm a product of LAUSD, a Huntington Park High School graduate, first in my family to go to college. I'm fortunate to have gone to UCLA and have a master's degree from Cal State Long Beach in social work. And I became a pupil service and attendance counselor because in 1999, when I was in high school, I witnessed 50% of my classmates drop out of high school. As a PSA counselor, what I want to do is 1, make a difference, and 2, ensure that the students in our communities have opportunities that I and my friends never had. So let me tell you a little bit about our school, Marquez High School, School of Social Justice, where our vision is that we are committed to developing global citizens who lead responsibly, who act courageously, and who inspire others to bring about positive changes in their community or society. We're one of 3 pilot schools on the Marquez High School campus. We have approximately 667 students enrolled, and 91% of our students are come from low-income households. 8.5% of them are English learners, and we have a couple of students in the foster care system. So why repeat ninth graders? What was my rationale? Well, repeat ninth graders are not exactly being targeted on a day-to-day. Yet their GPA and attendance shows that there's a disconnect between ninth graders and our school. Plus, qualitative data shows that ninth graders have the highest chronic absenteeism at the School of Social Justice. So let's look at the last 3 years. Granted, last year's data was impacted by a teacher strike. But nonetheless, within the last 3 years, more than 25% of our ninth grade students were chronically absent. So I decided to look just a bit deeper and break it down a bit more. I was able to break down the difference between true ninth graders and repeat ninth graders, discovering that almost all repeat ninth graders last year had less than a 2.0 GPA, and all of them had a less than a 2.0 GPA the 2 years prior, clearly seeing that there's an equity gap that we have to address. So I decided to do some more research, this time some qualitative studies. So I interviewed 3 parents of repeat ninth graders, 3 actual repeat ninth graders, and 3 out of classroom personnel. Our parents, the 3 parents that I talked to, said that the transition to high school was really difficult for their students. 2 out of 3 of them said they never talked to their student about the importance of attendance, but they all agreed that attendance should have been talked about with their students since kindergarten. The students all agreed that they didn't feel connected to someone at the school. And 2 out of 3 of them said that the teachers in middle school were a lot more lenient than the teachers in high school. All 3 of them said that their parents did talk to them about the importance of attendance. When talking to our out-of-classroom personnel, one of the biggest things was that they all believe that social factors affect attendance, and that our school attendance incentive programs were actually helping our student attendance. All 3 of them agreed that we should place some extra research and some extra support on ninth graders so that we don't have repeat ninth graders. When I looked a little bit further, it turns out I wasn't the only one doing research on attendance, and that attendance rates have a direct correlation to academic success, which in turn has an impact on graduation rates. But what was more important was the Chicago study that shows that ninth grade early warning monitoring systems based on course grades and attendance in high school are critical to keep all students on track to graduate. Because the reality is that for many of our students, academic problems begin when they enter high school. All this research brings me to my problem statement. Given the quantitative and qualitative data collected, it's evident that an equity gap exists in the ninth grade group, as chronic absenteeism ninth graders is not exactly being addressed. This includes the need for repeat ninth graders, creating an even bigger equity gap between ninth graders and all other grades. So my theory of action, if we implement the intense case management program for repeat ninth graders with attendance educational components for first-time ninth graders, and trying to get some participation from parents and ninth grade teachers, then we'll create a positive attendance culture among the ninth grade cohort at Marquez High School School of Social Justice. So how did this all transpire? Well, after looking at the data, I researched methods that have been proven to work with students with attendance issues, and I came across an evidence-based practice called Check and Connect. I discussed this practice with my community of practice group. The concept of Check and Connect links an adult to each at-risk student, which in this case would be our repeat ninth graders. The role of the adult is to check and connect, begin building rapport with their students on a weekly basis. These adults became mentors, case managers, listeners, friends, and advocates. My community of practice group decided to go with it. They really liked the concept. So, who is my community of practice group? Well, they're teachers and out-of-classroom personnel that may be able to influence others. The way I saw it was, if I made believers out of them, they can help me get all the rest of the staff on board. Community of practice group were volunteers, but they knew that we were going to focus on attendance. One of the members is an AVID coordinator who's also an English teacher. The other member was an A through G counselor who has experience teaching history, our psychiatric social worker, and myself, a pupil services and attendance counselor. So we became what I call the A team, hence attendance. Which brings me to my actual project. So I designed my project focusing on our 9 repeat ninth graders with chronic absenteeism issues. We established group norms and schedule, and reflection became a big component of our group. You'll see how that transpired a little later. The concept was, if repeat ninth grade students begin to attend school regularly, they'll be able to obtain the instruction necessary to pass their courses. In addition, once they establish a relationship with their Check and Connect adult, they'll be able to connect with them for additional resources, such as after-school tutoring or credit recovery. Establishing these positive connections with school staff will improve the repeat ninth grade chronic attendance problem, but it will also help with the well-being of these students. What were our goals? For the adults specifically, what I wanted was for them to understand the importance of attendance and how it's connected to student success, and getting them to connect with their students, with their assigned students, and then to become attendance leaders at our school. For our students, I wanted to increase their daily attendance, have them feel connected to adult on campus, and understand the importance of attendance. So this didn't happen overnight. There definitely was a process. It started in December with some data collection. January was when we met and began planning. February and March, we implemented week by week with our Check and Connect. Unfortunately, due to this pandemic, our Check and Connect was cut a bit short in March. I was fortunate enough to collect post data. For the adults, what I did was a pre-survey and a post-survey. And for the students, I looked at their attendance data, the number of absences before Check and Connect and the number of absences after Check and Connect. Our implementation plan was definitely rewarding. The group enjoyed connecting with students. Meeting after meeting, we discussed what students were learning, but also had adults reflect on what they were getting from Check and Connect. Each adult had 2 students assigned to them. And I picked up a caseload as well because I'm a strong believer of leading by example. We went with them weekly, discussed our frustrations of not being able to see them all the time because obviously they had attendance issues. But one of the biggest breakthroughs was our first success story when one of our adults said that she was able to connect with the student because they both had an admiration for Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, hence my Laker colors slide. So what were our student outcomes? Well, we started with 9 students. Unfortunately, throughout the process, we lost 2. They checked out to other schools. Out of the 7 remaining, 4 actually improved their attendance. As you can see, are highlighted. We had 1 student that had 20 absences before Check and Connect, only had 3 after. And the biggest one was student number 8, had 9 absences before Check and Connect, and only had 1 after. Our adult outcomes. So 2 out of the 4 didn't exactly believe that this process would work, that connecting with our students wasn't going to make that huge of a difference in the sense of having that one-on-one. But this community of practice helped highlight attendance. Attendance did become all of our business, and all 4 educators believe that the Check and Connect process helps others. Educators saw firsthand how they could make a difference by connecting. And let me show you just a little snippet of how important it became to them once they connected. They even made reflection part of our daily norms. Check it out.
Can we add on a self-reflection piece as part of our group norms? Since we are a community of practice and our job is to support students, and a good idea if we reflected on our process also.
That's a good idea. Yeah, okay, it's a good idea. Awesome. Looks like we have consensus. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add a self-reflection as part of our group norms. Sounds good. Okay, so let's get down to business.
As you saw there, halfway through our weekly meetings, our reflection became part of our group norms because the adults in our group were starting to begin to see the difference that they had amongst themselves, like the importance of reflecting with their students and actually connecting with them. So it was pretty amazing to see them bring it to the table. And this particular educator is definitely going to be one of the individuals that's going to be our team captain in getting Check and Connect with all our colleagues. All 3 of them agreed to being part of the A-team for the next school year. So speaking of reflection, I did some reflecting myself. The reality is that this group brought a lot to the table. I learned a lot about myself, but one of the biggest things that I want to highlight is capsule number 5, which is guiding the team on what's best for students by using research-based practice. It was interesting. The moment that I presented evidence-based practice, it was easy to obtain buy-in from our group because it was a concept that was working at other schools throughout the country with similar demographics as ours. And I didn't think that I had it in me to be able to develop other leaders. I guess I never really reflected on that. So looking specifically on capsule number 2, developing leaders with professional learning. And I feel that that's what we were doing week by week when we were meeting. Not only were we talking about how our project was going and how our connecting was going with students, but we were able to talk amongst the adults on how it was impacting us. And I really believe that it was definitely something that we learned from one another, and we really learned how important checking in with students on a weekly basis is, and the need that our students have, and how we were able to fill that void. What I learned about myself as a leader, well, one of the things is to make change, we have to believe in the change. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm really passionate about attendance for obvious reasons. Seeing so many of my classmates not graduate with me is definitely something that keeps me going. And it was definitely a topic that I picked for a reason, but it was a topic that I felt that would definitely open the eyes of many of the adults on our campus. I realize that I avoid conflict, but when it comes to children, I stand strong. And that data is definitely a tool that will convince, well, not everyone, but I'm hoping almost everyone. And I also learned that evidence-based practice, that the illustration of it, when you're presenting to other adults, it works best. That's how you're able to get all your stakeholders on board. And to finish off, I want to thank my mentor, Mr. Boswell, our Fab 5 group, which is the individuals that were in my week-to-week group getting me through this program. Obviously, my community of practice group, which are also my colleagues, and of course, my family, who is my foundation. This is a bit of the references that I have where I got my information, where I was able to see that I wasn't the only one doing research on attendance. But that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
How do you find a balance? Because you mentioned that you are a product of the community, you graduated from another high school in the community, and now you find yourself, I'm sure, oftentimes counseling students whose parent is somebody that you went to high school with. Are you finding that to be true in many cases? And then how are you making those connections?
So I think one of the biggest things about this particular project with the Check and Connect is understanding where the student is. So when we deal with parents, they themselves have their own, I guess, upbringing issues that aren't really those that we can deal with. But with this Check and Connect process, it's kind of it's being able to connect with the student and having them understand that it doesn't have to be the same way. They don't have to follow the same footsteps as their parents. The reality is that the cycle needs to be broken somewhere. And if it can't be broken at home, then maybe something like Check and Connect will help them break the cycle by us being the mentors and the adults on campus being those mentors.
I agree. It's worth moving forward on.
Sounds good. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And I will stop sharing my thing here and I will stop recording.